Maybe there's just a few moments if there are any questions today.
What happened to Anguliman's previous life, like go to bed to kill
There's some description of his previous lives. One of them is found in the Jataka stories, even the one which we've seen on the DMC channel, where we heard the man-eater Jataka. Did you watch that? Where there was a king. He had been what we call an ogre in a previous lifetime. Ogre or a yaka. Who had human flesh as his staple diet for many lifetimes. When eventually he overcame that retribution and was able to become a decent human being, he still had tendencies to eat people and kill them for flesh. It was a temptation he couldn't resist. But eventually he heard the Dhamma and could reform himself, until eventually in his final lifetime he became Angulimala, who on the face of it was a very grateful student who would do anything his teacher asked of him, a very powerful personality, but yet he had this weakness not to be able to tell the difference between good and evil. Once he got in with a group of bad friends who were a bad influence, especially his teacher who sent him out to do this task of collecting up fingers, then he didn't have enough wisdom on his own to be able to keep himself on track. Within him he had the potential to be an enlightened arahant, but yet these things still came in his way. And it was only by hearing the teaching of the Buddha that he could be averted from disaster by killing his own mother to realize his potential for enlightenment. So even Angulimala had a checkered past, because he had been a cannibal or a man-eater for many lifetimes before he came to this last lifetime as Angulimala. He tried his best, but he made mistakes, like everyone tends to make mistakes. Any more questions? Yeah?
In the evolution, the fossil record, you only see human skeletons for about 60 million years, and you see monkey-like ones. Are we missing, just haven't found the right fossils yet?
This can be true. It's sometimes that we haven't dug deeply enough. And it may be that even the weight of the earth down to a certain level is so much that fossils don't survive.
We found the dinosaurs for hundreds of years.
Don't remember, this earth has disappeared and reformed. And there's also a fossil record of very large human beings, which to my knowledge have not been explained yet. I tell you about that? Where the skull of the human is the size of about 6 feet high. Even the skull. That, I haven't seen that explained scientifically yet. And it's not a hoax. So the fossil record is broken at best. People tend to find what they're looking for. If it doesn't fit in with the fossil record, it gets sort of marginalized. Science should be objective, but sometimes people are looking very hard to find a particular Australopithecine to fit in the gap between fossil record or whatever. There are a lot of unexplained proto-human types. On the basis of fossil record alone, it's not enough. You need hundreds of fossils of the same type to prove that there had been a certain species alive at that time. And you simply don't have that. You have one or two. It's like history in the past. People used to live in wooden houses or mud houses. You don't have a historical record at all. So it's very hard on the basis of this very material sciences to prove something about history or substantiate the history of a certain theory.
Yes,
Where were these large human skeletons found?
As far as I know, in America. The dinosaurs, in fact, I'm trying to remember back in detail, but the dinosaurs are like a freak. We get excited about dinosaurs like, there's times when there's only dinosaurs, but dinosaurs are only like a freak time between human existences, where all the sorts of beings at that time became very large beings, according to what our abbot tells us. So we get excited about dinosaurs as if they were the average beings in the ancient prehistoric times, but in fact this was not the case. They're just a very notable form of beings at that time. But in fact there were many more small animals which maybe we couldn't tell the difference between how they were today and how they were millions of years ago. Yeah.
That puzzled me when I heard about how long the heavenly beings live. Sometimes it seems hard to fill up your time. You may got 70 years, and you struggle to fill up. How do you fill up millions, if not billions of years of time?
Well, it is a long time, but angels in general have ways of entertaining themselves. They waft around and play music and eat whatever they like and don't get fat, and look at their gardens and look at other people's heavenly mansions, and they think they're eternal, They think that life was always like that because they can't remember anything else. Or for other forms of angels who don't lose touch with their career of good deeds, they meditate, and that can be a very useful time to cultivate what you've learned during your time in the human realm further. But it's only within the fourth level of heaven that you find that normally. And of course the Brahmas which meditate where they are.
What would Buddhism explain about artificial reproduction?
Well, what would you think? You still need a sperm and an egg or not?
But scientists be able to screen more the quality of the offspring, sort of like cow, sheep.
You're talking about cloning? Well, you can clone bodies, but you can't clone minds. So, supposing you get some sheep called Dolly, and you clone its cells and make a new sheep called Dolly 2 or whatever, the being which will come and inhabit that body is not a clone of the being from Dolly 1. It's a completely new being which has a suitable level of karma to arise in that body of a sheep. And it would be the same for a human being. Again, the Christians have real problems with this, that you are playing at being God. But in the end, a mind gets into a body only by its karma. It's not because of the decision of some geneticist or the person who has done the cloning. So in Buddhism we don't have a problem with that, because in any case you don't reproduce minds. So the question from karma before, and talking about whether one being can become three or whatever, no, it confuses the issue. We don't find that you can clone a person's mind into a second body. If you could, then that would be good. I'd be able to stay with you for more time during the Dhammadayada training, and my clone could go and do things in other places as well. But so far it hasn't happened, you see. Maybe they will invent a way to do that, in which case I'll be very happy. Yeah.
How small a creature can we be born into? You mentioned an amoeba.
A louse. If you remember back to that one, that's the smallest I've heard of. A louse. The Buddha didn't, as far as I know, say how small, but he did say that he made the wish. that he would never be born as an animal smaller than a bird. Because the chances of an animal smaller than a bird appreciating what's the difference between good and bad is even smaller than for a regular animal. So if you're a bird, okay, maybe you can be a compassionate bird or something. But once you get smaller than that to be an ant, you know, what is it, a dutiful ant or whatever? It becomes so hard to pursue good deeds that, you know, you're wasting your time during that lifetime. So you can be born at any size of being, but don't make a wish to do that. Maybe killing that sort of animal. And there's the other thing the metaphor I didn't tell you before was, if you kill a certain animal, you are born as an animal like that to be killed by others for as many lifetimes as there are hairs on the body of that animal. So if you kill a dog, then however many dog hairs there are on the body of a dog, you are reborn as many times as there are hairs as a dog for others to kill. Sorry? A snake? Well, maybe they count it in scales, I don't know. Yeah.
When I come to your recording, I asked with my medium, our Dhamma medium mother, and she said, I showed the Dhammakai's picture, and she bowed and said, no, it's right, yes, you win. And I showed the voiceable picture, he's going to my master first, and she bowed and said, say to your master, bless me, and I will also help this temple to protect him. And the message was that so many enemies, be careful about the speaking thing. And she is a Hindu demon girl, and Lord Buddha hated her, and since 2,500 years, she is using maybe thousands of, which is Confucian, normal human body. Now it's maybe more than 6 bodies she can use. One is familiar with my family. So I was wondering, the 6 months no contact with her, no phone. I mean, I was in Singapore. When I go back, she cried, why you in sun? I said, you have magic. I said, you can watch. I'm with the Galan, with the good thing going or bad thing doing. And she said, no. It was spirit when it come to my body. And that is a godmother. But this is your body, mother, you know what I'm saying? And my question is that, even she said, Dhammakaya is very good, and she Christian, but said dangerous, and they want to help us. And she blessed me, and she sent his son, 5 sons she had said, spirit son before one. And watching budget, and he was saying, Mommy, I want to go there, and I take permission. May I have friend this one spirit son? And he sent it. But when the airplane seat was empty, 7 I, 6 number 9, and 6, 7 was empty, and 8 was on Japanese scale. And I shocked. And sometimes I question come, isn't it that spirit also can help us? Or not? Confusion, yeah.
Well, normally the spirit doesn't need to take the aeroplane if it's a powerful one.
Yeah.
But how can they know things like this? In brief,
She needs blessing from our masters.
when mediums do this, how can they have more knowledge than a normal human being? Well, they are able to communicate with spirits. Normally they are spirits of the first level of heaven, which have much longer lives. Like I mentioned, 1 day, 1 night in heaven is 50 days and 50 nights in the human realm. So their length of their lifespans is much longer than us. Their knowledge is where we only know one lifetime, but they know the equivalent of many of our lifetimes. So the things they know extend the past and the future for very long. Also, spirits talk to one another. Spirits in different parts of the world talk to one another. So they have, by communicating with spirits, you have access to more knowledge than you have as a human being. However, in Buddhism, we don't support people to indulge in this, because every time you become possessed by a spirit in order to know its knowledge, you lose your control of yourself. And this is very dangerous, and this is why we call it black arts, because it's not compatible with the pathway towards enlightenment. So therefore, if someone has been a spiritual medium in the past, normally we try to encourage them to stop doing this, but instead to practice the white arts of the pathway towards purity instead. And it's never too late to stop doing that.